All right, so a few years back, specifically from like late 2021 to early 2024, I used to work at this pretty well known clothing slash home decor store. And during my very long 3.5 years at this store, I met a lot of people. And when I say I met a lot of people, I mean I met a lot of people, okay? Some young, some old, some good, some bad. You get the idea, right? Except out of all those people I met over the 3.5 years I was there was one in particular who really stood out to me. And the reason I say that is because this person ended up becoming my first and pretty much only real girlfriend up until this point. But of course, I'm not going to use her real name. So to protect her identity, we're just going to call her Rachel. Now, for context, Rachel and I met because at the time I was a supervisor for the customer service department, and she was one of the new cashiers who got hired at the time. So, naturally, me being in charge of customer service, I had to be the one to train her, which at first was kind of awkward because she was very shy and quiet, and it felt like she was low key intimidated by me since I, technically was her boss. But over time, we actually got really close and we eventually started talking outside of work, which was really cool at first because the two of us had a lot of things in common, music taste and sense of humor or whatever. So I eventually started to develop feelings for her. And, at the time, it started to feel like she felt the same way about me too because, we pretty much talked every day. But unfortunately for me, she was still hung up on her ex who had recently broken up with her at the time. So anytime I tried to make a move, she'd do that thing where, girls pull away and any feelings I had for her would more or less get shut down, which got really old after a while. So I slowly began to distance myself from her. But, some time passed and we eventually started talking again. And we actually both ended up confessing to each other about how we felt, which eventually led to us dating. And, that ended up being a whole new experience for me because up until that point, I had talked to girls here and there, but I had never truly had a real girlfriend before. I didn't date in high school because I was pretty shy and no one ever really piqued my interest. And I grew up in a relatively strict household where I wasn't allowed to date. So I pretty much had little to no experience when it came to women. Rachel, on the other hand, had already been around the block once or twice, so let's just say I ended up learning a lot from her. And I'm not gonna lie, it got a little bit out of hand after a while because, like I said before, we were coworkers. So there'd be times where we were both in the break room alone and we'd be in the locker room section of the break room, like making out and doing a bunch of other stuff that I'm not gonna say because I'm not trying to get this video taken down. But, it was crazy. Like I said, I learned a lot and she ultimately ended up being the person that I lost my V card to, which I don't really want to dwell too much on, but it is what it is. But little did I know at the time, Rachel's ex was actually como se dice, a YN, which I'm not gonna actually say what the term YN stands for, so you can just look it up for yourself. But yeah, he was a YN. And let's just say bro left his mark on Rachel in more ways than I could imagine. So for every 30 minutes of peace and love between Rachel and I, there'd be like 3 hours of therapy where I'd have to pick up the pieces of a heart I wasn't responsible for breaking. Except despite all this, down the line, I found out that she was actually still talking to him behind my back, even though she told me she wasn't countless times. And I ended up finding out about it on the day that her and I became official, which feel free to flame me in the comments because what the fuck was I thinking, bro? But yeah, we were at this really beautiful park in our town that has a lake and a bunch of, grass fields and stuff. Pretty much the main date spot for couples in our city. And at one point we were laying on one of the fields by the lake together where, I asked her if she wanted to be my girlfriend. And, she ended up saying yes and it was all romantic or whatever. But about 20 minutes later when we were cuddling watching something on her phone, I see this text pop up, and unfortunately for me, it was from her ex. And I confronted her about it, and she ended up apologizing to me or whatever. But I'm not gonna lie, from that day on, nothing was the same between us. Whatever love I had for her was now, I don't want to say completely tainted, but it's just things were not the same from that moment on. And it pretty much just went even more downhill from there because aside from the fact that she lied about entertaining her ex, at the time there was this Edgar who worked with us, which for those of you who don't know what an Edgar is, it's basically just a Mexican YN. And I kid you not, this dude was always, and I mean always trying to flirt with her or, spit game her or whatever. And whenever Rachel and I would be talking one-on-one, I kid you not, she'd always find ways to bring him up in conversation here and there, which, naturally made me really suspicious. So I always had a gut feeling that something was going on between them. And sure enough, one day my coworker at the time who knew that we were dating, she told me that she caught the two of them making out in his car in the store parking lot because they were both on, lunch break or whatever. Which, let's just say, more or less destroyed me. And as soon as I found out about that, whatever love for her I had left, whatever positive image of her I once had in my head, we're now both completely gone, dude. And I mean, like I said before, those thoughts and feelings were already, kind of halfway out the door, but that was the final straw for me. Like, the fact that she hid her true character as well as she did is honestly so disturbing to me, even to this day. And the fact that she'd look me dead in the eyes and tell me things like, I love you, and that, I was the only one for her, whatever other BS she'd say, all while doing this behind my back is absolutely insane. And I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of ruined my ability to trust from this point on, which I know sounds stupid because a lot of you are probably thinking, hey, this is your fault. What were you thinking? Didn't you notice the signs? But to be completely honest with you guys, no, I didn't. She was so unbelievably good at selling this pure slash, Christian girl persona to me that I literally didn't suspect a thing. And she ultimately used my inexperience as a way to take advantage of me. And, I'll be honest, I sometimes wonder about all the other things she did behind my back when we were together, which I know I shouldn't because it's not good to pay any mind to those kinds of things once it's all, been said and done. But it's just something that crosses my mind from time to time. But yeah, it just sucks now because like I said before, it feels like I can't trust anyone the way I trusted her ever again. And in hindsight, I feel like I was way too eager to give myself to her the way I did, both physically and emotionally. I should have truly gotten to know her before doing, anything with her at all. And if I could take it all back and do it, do the whole thing over again with the right person, I would in a second, man. I think I just got so caught up in the idea of finally having a girlfriend and finally getting to experience what, everyone ultimately yearns to experience, that I ignored pretty much every red flag imaginable. And I mean, now that I'm a little older and have more life experience under my belt, I don't worry about these things anymore, but I just wish I had waited for the right person to come along. And I wish I realized back then that your innocence, isn't something you should give away so freely. But I mean, at the end of the day, I learned from it, and I can confidently say that I'm a much wiser and overall better person after going through that. I just wish I could open up to people the way I'd like to, and I wish I didn't feel so cynical when it came to things like love and relationships, but ultimately I know God has better things in store for me, and I know this won't be the last time I get hurt. I just hope I get to meet someone who won't put me through something like that ever again. But for anyone who's watching this that's, been through the same thing or is currently going through the same thing right now, I hope you all get through it, and I hope you end up meeting someone who wouldn't even entertain the idea of doing something like that to you. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. God bless.